Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. Just the other day, I saw someone ask about career advancement opportunities for a veterinary assistant. That was opening a can of worms for someone like me who loves talking about career possibilities in vet med. As I started listing some ideas to see what intrigued her, she seemed to be really interested in the business side of the profession, mentioning that she really liked her current role as a manager. Our guest today also found out that she liked the business side of vet med too. Melissa Tompkins Lewis was recommended by a previous podcast guest, Rhonda Bell, who said in her email introduction, "Melissa is one of my favorite people on the planet, no question. If she said we are jumping off a bridge together, I'd get my floaties and head to the bridge. She is just an inspiration. No matter what knocks this one down, she gets right back up." How could I pass on a referral like that? Melissa is a certified veterinary practice manager with lots of other letters behind her name and currently has a veterinary business consulting practice called South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions. But it was a journey to get to where she is today, helping many veterinary practices around the country through direct work and speaking at conferences. I'll let Melissa share her story and her insights, so let's get to the conversation with Melissa Tompkins Lewis. I think it's actually interesting to go way back into your resume because I saw some very interesting things, like working at Disneyland. I'm a Disney fan, as well as even working in some other areas of like credit card and stuff like that. And I think we learn a lot of skills in our early jobs like that. So I'm curious, do you mind sharing a little bit about some of your earlier work experiences?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, so technically my very first job was working at a video shop and it was paid into the table and the lady was really mean. So I quit after a few weeks, and then I worked at Jack in the Box for a bit, but then I actually went to Disneyland. And I think Disneyland, I started at 17. I worked from 17 to 19 and it was a very, very shaping type of job as far as like client service, because this was 30 plus years ago. So it's a little different today. Their rules have relaxed a little, like they didn't have facial hair before. You had certain rules that are very specific about. But I really think it taught me how to look at client service in a way that felt holding it to a really high standard. Like, don't point, use your whole hand to show some direction, like things that they taught us. And so I think that really did carry over to my career to today. Like that's what I learned was the right way to do it. And I have not unlearned it. So, that client service is definitely ingrained in me. So I think it was a really good. It was a true first job. The other ones don't really count. They were just kind of like temporary. So I think it was a really good experience. And then when I worked in finance, I worked in collections, actually. And I worked a couple other retail jobs, but I did collections and I did that for 8 years. And so I think that really taught me how to have conversations that weren't necessarily the most positive. Asking people for their money, when they were late on their payments. And I did credit card. I also did auto finance. So like, having to repo cars was not always a fun thing, but we had to do it sometimes. So it definitely shaped me in a different way of what, having that conversation and having some empathy and compassion with it, because, it also taught me that people lie a lot and they try to manipulate you into thinking they've paid it when they really haven't. So yeah, it was a good experience. I would not want to do it again today. Like I have mad respect for people who do collections because it's a hard job. So definitely would not want to go back into that now. I'm good. But some good experiences for me to have.
Yeah, you've learned some skills. We can apply them, but we're moving on.
Yes. I don't need to call you and ask for money. But I have had to do it in hospitals because, clients don't always pay or there was a discussion and stuff. So I have had to do it a little bit within my not my current job as a consultant, but as a practice manager, I did do it. So it's definitely applicable.
Now, I also saw that you went and got your bachelor's in animal science. So when did you start finding that you really liked animals and were curious and moving in that direction?
Probably since I was a little kid, that typical story of every veterinary professional, like they used to save all the animals and that. But when I was little, I was told, "Oh, you're too sensitive. You'll cry. You can't do that job." And so I believed it. I believed that, okay, well, they're probably right. I'm too sensitive or whatever. Which I don't think that's a bad thing, to be perfectly honest. Now, as an adult, I'm kind of like, that's stupid to say, but as a child, I didn't. Right? As a young adult, I still thought that was the truth. But then I found actually a cat who had been hit by a car while I was driving. I found her in the middle of the road and I got her. I actually stopped another cat from running her over by using my body as a shield, which maybe not the brightest thing, but I know other veterinary professionals who've done the same. So no judgment. But then what I did with her is I took her to the emergency clinic. I didn't panic. I didn't freak out. I didn't start crying. I took her in. Turned out she just had a broken baby tooth. That was all that was wrong with her. So I ended up adopting her. And so it taught me that my emotions were manageable in a crisis. This dog or this cat had been hit by a car. And so like in one of the worst moments of any animal's life, I was there and I handled it. So then I thought, okay, wow, I can do this. And then I found out about Cal Poly Pomona's pre-veterinary program. And so then, I was originally going to be a veterinarian, but then the longer I was in the program and the more I worked at my hospital, my first hospital, the more I realized the business side was a better fit. But I love the medicine part. I love being around the animals. I love being around all of the atmosphere within a hospital, but I didn't necessarily want to do the veterinarian's course as I was in school to go on to vet school. I had to change my plan after I graduated, but yeah, that was kind of like how I got in. And I can look back to that single moment of finding a crash is what I named her in the middle of the road as the pivotal moment in the career I have today exists because of that.
She also sounds like a very resilient cat.
She was a cat. So, there you go. Like that's all you need to know about her. She was a calico. She's passed away several years ago now, but yeah, she was a resilient cat. She was a good girl. She was very, very bratty and opinionated and stubborn and all the things that a calico is. True to her soul.
Well, I loved hearing you describe that while you were working, and I think it was a cat clinic too, was your first clinic, that you were looking around and actually understanding that you liked the business aspect of things better. Do you mind digging in a little bit more? Like what did you notice about the business part that intrigued you? And did you have people that supported you in going that direction, seeing different options of how to continue to pursue that?
Yeah. I don't necessarily have like someone supporting me at the time. Like my senior years when I kind of figured out like being a vet wasn't the right fit. So I was like, oh crap. So I started a few jobs. I applied to the USDA. I started applying to other things within the industry. And then my front office manager, my first practice, ended up getting terminated. And so when she wasn't there was a big hole in some of the things that were, because the hospital didn't have a practice manager at the time. So there was a big hole in the business things, like things that weren't being processed or done or double checked and all that. And so I just started to, I was working full time now because I graduated and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And so I just started taking all this responsibility without meaning to. And then my practice owner said, hey, she saw me in what my leadership capacity was because I was sort of directing the flow and I was paying attention to stuff. Like we had all these like invoices that weren't closed, they weren't processed, and there was money due, whether it was like 50 cents or $5 or $50. So it was things I was really paying attention to that kind of got her attention to what I was capable of doing. And I discovered that I kind of liked that. And I liked seeing stuff in the computer and understanding the client issues and fixing things and then thinking about protocols because I would see like mistakes repeatedly that I'm like, well, maybe we should have a double checking our, prescriptions. Like we're only having one person look at it and things are being sent home incorrectly. So it's just like stuff that I would observe and notice and recognize that I was a fixer, which a lot of practice managers are. And I think that's a trait. I'd say it's necessary, but I definitely think it's helpful to want to fix the problems because then, stuff gets done. So that was kind of how I evolved into the position. And my practice owner gave me a shot because she saw what I was doing when I wasn't a manager. And she thought, well, wow, if you had some authority and some responsibility legitimately, then what with that? So that was good. I got into that position because otherwise I would have left my practice and gone into industry. I actually got offered a job at VPI right after I accepted the official manager of my practice. I literally, like the first day I started as the manager, as a promotion, I got the notification they hired me at VPI, and I was like, sorry, already accepted another job. So kind of funny, ironic.
Well, and hopefully in a good way, because just now knowing a lot of what you've done is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And I think we have come a long way when it comes to supporting that role, the hospital administration or managers. And what have you experienced? How did you personally continue to grow yourself and your understanding in the role? And then what have you seen as time has gone on that, things have changed in the veterinary setting, but especially for this role?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of changes. My first my practice owner showed me about, a certified veterinary practice manager because I had college, I had a bachelor's degree when I took over as the manager. I already had that going for me because that is one of the requirements, not a bachelor's degree, but college education, college coursework is a requirement to take your CDPM exam. So she gave me the information about it. And it was a few years later when I actually kind of started to meet people in industry. She sent me to like the AHA conference, and that was like eye-opening to what are the potentials. And so I ended up meeting another manager, and she and I studied and took a class together. There's like a prep course to become a CDPM, and we took the exam together. And so that was kind of my biggest career development for myself. At the time, I think we were like, I don't remember our exact numbers, but at the time there was like 300 something CDPMs in the United States and Canada. Now there's almost 1,000, or there is 1,000. So there's a lot more today. I got my CDPM in 2011. When I got it, you actually had to fly or go to the location, either the conference or the management exchange. They didn't have the online version yet. Now it's online, but at the time it wasn't. So it was definitely an effort that I had to make. So I definitely saw that progression in myself. And in the industry, that first conference I went to, the industry, and it still is very, very veterinarian focused. And I think that's okay because obviously they're so essential for us to do anything. We need veterinarian, but it's harder for managers and I would say the front team because there is no, I don't want to say recognition, but it was kind of like at the conference, if you're either a certified technician or a doctor and everybody else, you're just staff. And so there was kind of a negative feeling that I would see. And I kind of had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about it because I thought, well, I have a 4-year bachelor's degree. That should count for something, and now I'm learning all this management stuff and I, becoming a CVPM. And I kind of thought, wow, that should really count. But fast forward to today, there is a lot more recognition and acknowledgement of management and the leadership roles that we have and we carry. And there is, other credentials that, I am also a professional in human resources for California, so I'm a PHR California. And so that's like something that a lot of managers have additional credentials now that I didn't see as much of in the beginning. And I think there's a bigger push to really recognize that you want a licensed, or I'm sorry, not licensed, but a credentialed, knowledgeable manager, not just an office manager that's going to do the employee schedule. You want someone who can help you grow your business, can look at your cost of your inventory, that can evaluate the financials in your hospital and also evaluate your hiring and recruiting process. And so I think back then it was there, but it wasn't as widespread. And definitely conferences, you didn't see it on badges. You just look like staff. Maybe you got practice manager, maybe not. The front team still is a little bit ignored. And I really don't like that for a profession. I'm really pleased to see some of the stuff that's happened recently with creating the Receptionist Association. And so I'm really happy to see those things because I still think that they have a long way to go. But I've definitely seen progressions in how we review and look at our practice management and that experience and why it's so important. And honestly, being able to team up with a practice owner and work collaboratively, whether it's the owner or it's the medical director, that relationship is so essential for the success of the practice. And I've seen a lot of changes in that aspect in my own career and then other people's as well.
Excellent. Yeah. I think we're in a profession that gets very hung up on letters behind the end of the name, right? Or this term credentialing. But I think it's so important to sit down and actually consider what is important to know. What are the skills, the competencies? I know that's a very kind of a cold term to me. It sounds not super warm, but yeah, what do we need? How can we support these particular roles and making sure that they're successful? Because each role in a hospital contributes or can subtract from the success of a hospital. And so I think it's important to have those as well. And so I agree. Rhonda is one of those who is helping put together more support for the veterinary receptionists or DSRs or whatever term we'll decide to go with in the future. And I think that's fantastic. And the other thing is, speaking of Rhonda again, one of the things that she was raving about you is she said, you're grace under fire. We all have challenges in our life and our career. And she said, you tend to be very open about them. Do you mind sharing a little bit of some of the challenges that you've had to go through in life and career and how that has helped you
learn more about yourself, but also kind of find your right place when it comes to creating your career?
I think it's funny that she's Grace under fire. I don't know. I'm actually someone that if I'm under stress, you can read it on my face. I'm not a good person to hide the stress. So I think that's funny, like Grace under fire. But I think that in those moments of chaos and busyness in the hospital, you can read it. If other people are experiencing the chaos and I'm behind the scenes, it's easier for me to manage other people's chaos than if I'm affected by it too. So it's interesting in that component. Like I can really help other people when they're stressed out and I can help them stay calm and I can do all these things. But if I'm stressed too, it's harder for me to have that. So it's definitely not my strength. But as far as like things within my life, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 22 years ago. Actually, I was diagnosed 18 years ago, but I had a misdiagnosis for 4 years. So I do have a really big passion for sharing about my MS. I didn't share for a long time because I didn't want any type of negative component for an employer. But today I don't care. So I own my own company, so it doesn't really matter. But I also realized that I was misdiagnosed for 4 years. When I went in for my first symptoms, they're like, oh, you have a pinched nerve. Fast forward 4 years later, I had a major vertigo issue that put me in the hospital, major effectiveness, and then find out, oh yeah, you actually have multiple sclerosis. So I'm very passionate on sharing this so that people know if you have something wrong with you and you go to the doctor and I don't want to say brush you off because I don't think I was brushed off, but it was like, oh, this is what's wrong. And I kept having those symptoms and I didn't pursue it further because I felt stupid that I was going in for a pinched nerve, And so I think that's where passionate for me is go again, get a second opinion. If you think they're not finding something or you still have the issue, even though they're telling you it's this and you're still, go for a second opinion and find out what's actually going on because the same thing happened to Rhonda with her medical condition as well. So I think we actively talk about it. I talk about it mostly for those reasons to share, like get to the end, like find out what is going on with you so that you're not constantly living in state of whatever your medical issue is. And I think that's important. And then in my own career, I worked for some really great hospitals and I was very fortunate. My first practice was amazing. It was the cat hospital and as the cat care clinic is the name. And that practice owner was really wonderful. She's still alive. I just don't work for her anymore, but she was a great person to work for. And then, I've had some other hospitals that were not as good. And I was actually terminated from a hospital. And it wasn't for something that I had actually done. It was, the owner listed a bunch of things that didn't really make sense. But, you can fire someone for any reason in any business in California, other than if it's something that's illegal that you can't fire them for. But it was a big learning curve for me because one, I was worried about my reputation now. I'm a certified veterinary practice manager. I have been in the field for X amount of years and now people are going to think I'm a loser because I was terminated. But fast forward to today, I wasn't a loser. It wasn't about me. Yes, it happened to me, but it was also about that owner and her, whatever she had going and what her perceptions of things. And then, I took that and I changed to a different position and then I opened my own company. So it was a pivot for me. I wished if I could go back, the only thing I would do is I would quit voluntarily. So I didn't have a blemish on myself, but I have spoken to several CVPMs who've also been terminated from bigger corporate hospitals, from smaller private practices. And a lot of it, again, is this. I think sometimes practice owners don't know what to do with really strong leader managers. We're very knowledgeable. And so I think that's what I've sort of perceived as a very common thing, unfortunately. And I've now spoken to probably at least 5 or 6 CVPMs who've been terminated. So for me, that was life-changing and very frustrating at the time. And now fast forward 6 years later, it is what it is. It's okay. Like I'm stronger because of it. And I'm much happier today in my current role than managing that one practice. So that was definitely a career changing thing to happen. I don't know the right word, but and so that would be like my pivot again, and I think that's kind of essential for us in life. I guess that's part of resilience. It's okay if something bad happens to you, it's absolutely okay to cry and be angry, and go through that grief process because anytime something happens to you, it really is grief. A lot of the times we think of grief as only when someone dies or a really big sickness or loss, but it's any loss. You're in a car accident, your car's totaled. You're grieving about that car, right? So I think that you take that, whatever happens to you, and then you figure out where do you go from here? And however much time you need to take for you, it's individual, but it is the resilience of knowing, okay, how do I pivot and what do I do now to make myself better? as opposed to if I would have gotten hung up on the fact that I was terminated and say, okay, I can't do this, and like walked away and let that affect me so poorly that I couldn't move on, like that would be bad for me. I mean, but I know people, if it happens to them and that's what they need to do, sometimes that's the reason, but just figuring out how to pivot and do the next step is kind of a life lesson that I've learned from a few different things. So.
Yeah, we talk about elective opportunities of pivoting, and we don't always talk about the times that we didn't necessarily choose it in the moment to make a change. And a lot of times they're surprising. And I think a lot of us in the profession, no matter what our roles are, can be problem solvers. But when it comes to our own problems, it can be harder. When I asked you what's some of your favorite things to talk about, because you do a lot of speaking and coaching people now, you said one of the things that you like to talk about, probably because you see it a lot too, is that we tend to go down rabbit holes in our thoughts, and we can be our own worst enemies, and including even seeing or assuming the worst intentions of people and just things in general. And we tend to kind of beat ourselves up. Why has that become an interest, and what more would you like to say on that?
This will sound wrong if I say I don't know a better term for this. Like I'd like to say I'm a recovering self-abuser, but not in the physical sense, not in the sense that, I know people who have physically hurt themselves and things. It's not that. I don't have a better word of someone who's constantly like having that negative self-talk where I like go down that rabbit hole like you talked about. And that's where I have a passion to help other people understand, because I see it in other people and I hear it in what they're saying. And so I still can do it 100%. Like I can still think, I start making assumptions about why I think something has happened a certain way or why I think someone's doing something. And I don't even know if it's true, but I'm reacting like it's true. So I've learned that this is a real thing. Making stuff up and reacting to it like it's true is a real thing. And sometimes, well, a lot of the times it's not true. Sometimes it will be, but a lot of times it's not. So I've observed it with multiple people. I've had conversations with people about it. I've seen it in myself many times. So I've really started to really want to hone in and talk to people about it so they can see that maybe they are just making it up. And it takes a lot of practice. The second you start thinking about that, you have to like give yourself a word or a phrase or an image or something that makes you say, stop. You don't know if this is real or not. I haven't heard back from this person, but that doesn't mean anything until I know. I gave this talk in NABC in June at the conference there and the Hive event, and it resonated with people. They get it. And they're, I did another similar version of it at the AVMA conference. And so people came up and they're like, thank you so much, because you made me recognize that I can stop sometimes. And you know what? You're not going to always be successful stopping those negative self-talks and those negative thoughts that you're imagining or assuming or whatever. But whenever you are, you'll make yourself better. Because Brene Brown's statement, she has one that says, I can't remember the beginning of it, but basically making those assumptions and thinking about it doesn't make it better when it actually finds out whether it happens or not, but it squanders the joy that we feel today. So, and that kind of goes, if you have a sick family member, they're going to pass away, dwelling on those thoughts today does not change the outcome, and it won't change the feelings for you when they actually do pass away, but it'll squander the joy you're feeling now. And so that's an extreme. Obviously, someone dying is a very, very serious thing, but I take that into other levels too, and it's more minor, because if I'm thinking about something that's irritating me or making me sad, it's like, why? Just stop. Like, don't relive that argument that you had from 5 years ago with your sister, like let go, like get over it. And that's not always easy to do at all, but I've learned how to control it better and how to have a better mindset towards it than I did 10 years ago, for sure. And my goal is to teach other people how they can help themselves do that too, to whatever level they can accomplish it. If they can get over it completely, that would be amazing. Most people can't. So if they can even get over it a few times a day, because this is something that a lot of people struggle with, these thoughts multiple times a day. Every conversation they have, they analyze it. Should I have said this? Should I have done this? Well, to me, now I've learned it's in the past. I can't change it. So I need to stop beating myself up over it. And that was a life-changing thing to really recognize and try to live by as much as I can.
There's another term I've heard. It's called, they call it ANTS, ANTS, automatic negative thoughts.
Oh.
And that's another thing of like when something happens, we automatically go to the worst case scenario, and also in a way of beating ourselves up too. It's like, instead of saying, oh man, made a mistake, I'm going to learn from that and move on. It's like, oh, I'm so stupid, or, I'm not smart, like that, that kind of thing. But it's definitely not helpful if you're beating yourself up, or if you're always jumping to the negative conclusion. And also filling in the gaps, something I've always seen and appreciated, so I bring it up a couple times, is that as human beings, we like to have a complete story. And very rarely in life do we actually get the whole story. And so we fill it in. And we rarely fill it in with like the most rosy situation. It's always like the worst case possible. And I'm sure it's a survival thing that we do this naturally, but it does take practice to kind of teach ourselves, how likely is that true? Is that helpful? Can I do anything about it? Those kinds of things, and moving forward from that. But I think that it can even come up at work, where it impacts our colleagues. If we are jumping to those conclusions, we aren't communicating them, we aren't thinking through. And so I think not only is it something that impacts us personally, it can impact the people around us. And I don't know if you've seen that in action, but I was just something I kind of thought about.
No, yes, definitely. I think it's like we make these assumptions of, one of the examples I get is if you come in the morning and the pet treatment area is a mess, the assumption is, oh my gosh, they were lazy, they didn't clean after themselves. Instead of, maybe you can assume, wow, they might have had an emergency that came in right at closing time, and they were going to be on crazy overtime if they stayed. So the manager or the shift lead said, don't stay, we'll clean up in the morning. It's those kinds of things. We do assume the worst instead of assuming the best. And so I think that's a really good thing to mention, is try assuming the best of every situation or of every individual instead of assuming the worst, until they show you one way or the other. And it maybe you assumed the best and it didn't work out. But a lot of times you might see the good thing if you assumed the best instead of the worst, But you said fill in the gaps. And I actually like that. I kind of wrote this down as like a little acronym. So like FIDGE, like you said, ants. I like the ant thing. And now I'm going to picture ants when I'm starting to have negative self-talk to myself. I'm going to picture a little ant. And hopefully it doesn't turn into a soldier ant colony, but it might.
It starts with one ant and then they all come. And so if we aren't watching our other type of ants, our automatic negative thoughts, they can form like this ginormous colony, which is, the wrong direction that we want to go. So by all means, that one's not mine, so you're not stealing it. But anything that helps and makes a visual, I'm a very visual person, I think is good for us.
Okay.
But yeah, so you had mentioned that you went from being an administrator of a single hospital and you are now a consultant. So that there's a lot of different things. And with that one, you're your own boss now, and you also had to learn how to be a business owner. So what was the journey? What were some of the things you had to learn about being a consultant, starting your own company, and what do you like about it?
The funny thing is I had thought about it because one of my good friends, Rhonda, had become a consultant for different reasons. And then my other friend, Andrea, had opened her company. I think she opened hers about 5 years before I did mine. And so I had people that I could ask the questions to. But my trigger was, the hospital I was working for at the time, and they had been changed to a corporation. And there was just some intricacy difficulties that I foresaw going down a road that I didn't want to be on. So I literally just told my husband, who was then my boyfriend, he said, well, I'm going to quit my job today. So I'm going to send the email. And he says, oh, send it quick before we go to lunch because I'm hungry. And I thought it was funny is that him supporting literally leaving my solid, decently pretty well-paying job to go out on my own. And his whole thought was, okay, that's fine. I'm going to eat. And he wasn't, that might sound like he was just not, he didn't care. He did care. He 100% cared, but he knew that's what I needed to do. His focus at that time was not in anything negative that could come out of this decision. It was, let's go to lunch and talk about it, but send the email first. So I didn't change my mind.
Melissa discussed her experience becoming a business owner and shared the ups and downs of building her consulting business, emphasizing the importance of leveraging relationships, continuous learning, and diversifying one's offering. She was able to leverage her existing network and relationships to more quickly get referrals and clients when starting her business. Knowing people who could vouch for her was very helpful. There were a lot of important components she had to learn about running a business, like choosing a name, setting up a website, etc. It was a steep learning curve at times. Melissa has diversified her business beyond hospital consulting, taking on roles like professional speaking. This has made her work more varied and fulfilling. A major part of her work is helping hospitals and organizations address challenges they are facing, like staffing issues or inefficient processes. She's able to share her experience and provide valuable support. While the work involves a lot of travel to different hospitals, Melissa enjoys the variety and being able to make a positive impact in multiple healthcare settings, and she doesn't miss the late night calls of someone calling out of work.
One of the things I remember you saying, one of the ways that you can actually support hospital managers right now is to go and reinforce the things that they've already been saying to the hospital. And you've told them that people listen to you more now as a consultant than they did when you were a hospital manager. Going back to what we were saying, just, supporting each unique role is that it's helpful to have somebody come and back you up. And I think often the hospital manager is the only person in that role. And so they don't always have someone to back them up or reinforce their thought process. It can be a lonely position. And so I think that's also helpful, even though you think you know how to do it, sometimes you need someone to come in and back you up. And so I think that is a very unique quality that you can bring through what you do now.
Yes. Recently, when I do a hospital, when I first start working with them, I do like an evaluation. It's not like a legal evaluation or anything regulatory. It's just I look at all the things I've seen hospitals do, maybe wrong or right or whatever. And so I do this evaluation. And the other day I was at a hospital, I had done my evaluation, I was doing my summary of it. And afterwards I asked the manager what she thought. And she told me, she goes, I thought you were going to say a bit more about the things I had done right. And I realized I failed her in that moment because my list was like 4.5 pages, this checklist I look at. She had done quarters of it correctly. And it was just that one quarter. And it wasn't even necessarily about her. It was about the things I found. So not all of them were on her. I didn't talk about the things she had done correctly. And I recognized that, oh my gosh, I should have said that. I told the owner a little bit verbally and said, your manager did a good job. I found a lot of things she did right. But they didn't go over what it was. And now I know the next time I do a summary, I'm going to say, okay, look at these things. Your manager has always stepped down. I want to acknowledge that so I can support them in a stronger way than I had not been doing that. I'd been focusing so much on what we need to fix that I didn't acknowledge what they had done well.
You at least said, what are your thoughts? So you gave that opportunity to continue to have a conversation. And I want to acknowledge that individual that she said something. She said, because sometimes we just suppress it and we just kind of have to deal with it internally.
We felt good that she felt comfortable enough with me to say something, that she didn't think I was going to have a negative reaction to it or that I was going to say something mean or harsh or whatever. So I'm happy that she did. And I told her, I said, I appreciate you so much for giving me this feedback because I think it's essential for me because I want to do things the way that helps hospitals and helps be them stronger. I don't want to say the right way, but I want to do things the right way for them. And so I didn't know that. I didn't think about it. So she said it. And I've been a consultant for 6 years and I never thought about this.
Well, we are always growing. And I think I admire you for constantly looking for, all right, I have a lot of experience. I also can learn a lot too. And I think that's important to never forget that. And it just keeps us strong and growing and helping people more and more on the way. And you also mentioned you've now worked with a lot of different hospitals. You've been a consultant for 6 years. You've seen a lot of the veterinary industry going to conferences and things. So I'm curious, just, kind of opening it up a little bit. What are some other things that in veterinary medicine that you're seeing? One, maybe one big opportunity that you see for veterinary medicine, and then also we'll do the good stuff too. What's something that you're really excited about that you're seeing that's very encouraging in veterinary medicine?
I think, and I do, I get COVID I didn't like COVID. Obviously, I don't think anybody really liked it, but I do give COVID a couple of props for that whole putting us into the 21st century of technology. So I've seen a lot of hospitals doing so much more with technology than they did before because they were sort of forced to, because now they're curbside and they had no communication and they had all these things. And so now all these hospitals are using better tools to make things easier for themselves, to text message to clients and to take payments via text message and to, a lot of hospitals had walkie-talkies before, but having communication tools to make sure that your clients can talk to them or they can talk to each other, and I think that definitely that is something that I've seen huge strides in those communication platforms, those technology platforms. Less and less hospitals that I go into today are paper charts. The majority of them are now electronic medical records. My first practice went electronic in 2004. So that was my very first experience. After like 6 months, we were paperless. Well, not paperless, but using the computer to document all our notations and things. And I think that to me, that's what I thought everybody was doing, but I've learned now. But more and more hospitals are now electronic, and the ones that are charted are starting to go, okay, I've got to get their electronic records. So there's a huge technology as I'm really seeing strides in, but I'm really happy for the future and moving forward, trying to have all these online stores. Finally, more and more hospitals are having them. This has been around for 20 years, but so many hospitals didn't do anything with it, or if they had one, they didn't really do anything with it. And so a lot of this stuff has just really changed. And I'm excited for the technology. And more certified veterinary practice managers. Like I said, we have over 1,000, I think now. And so it's really cool for management, the receptionist association, and really growing. I think technicians, I don't know what will happen with this, with the AVMA and the trying to look at for technicians to have the in human medicine, there's nurse practitioner. So what I think about that, I don't have opinions, but I won't go into it now. But what I really like to see is more and more states acknowledging title protection for their technician. Because in my personal opinion, if I were going to a human hospital, I really don't want someone who doesn't have schooling and some type of educational component and passing an exam to be working on me. So I understand that there's countless technicians in different states where you're allowed to call them a technician. They're not protected. They don't have a license or whatever, that have been doing it for 30 years. And so 30 plus years or whatever, I'm not taking away from them, but I would really love it. Every state have this educational component to be able to be a technician, because then all of our technicians should have better opportunities to grow their skill set and to be able to learn more. And a lot of mistakes that we make, and some of it's because we didn't know. And I'd hate that to be because we didn't have an opportunity to get schooling.
The roles of a veterinary technician is a hot button issue right now. If you are listening in real time, the 2024 election has stirred up the conversation even more. Colorado just passed a bill in favor of a mid-level practitioner or veterinary nurse practitioner role. So hopefully we can have more conversations on this, since it is involving the possibilities of careers in vet med. But on an individual level, remember, think about what is important to you when it comes to your career, and understand the laws of your state. Understand that no matter the type of practice, independent, corporate, etc., each individual practice will be different. Melissa definitely understands this because of all the different practices that she has been able to go into and work with. Now, as we're getting to the final and best question, Melissa offered some great advice that I think is helpful for all of us, and it kind of returns us back to those automatic negative thoughts or ants.
They do. Animals, they make us laugh. So that's the wonderful thing about what we do, is we do get to have funny stories and fun things, is in addition to all the negative, sad things too, but the fun stuff is focus on that. And that's one thing too, we were talking about focusing on the worst instead of the best, really looking at, if you have 100 clients and you have 100 clients that love you and send you cards and gifts and all that, and then you have one client that makes a complaint, you almost have to say, I've got 100 that love me. I don't have to care about you. Do you read the complaint and see, is there any truth to it? Do you learn from it and say, was there something we could have done differently? And if not, let it go.
Yeah. Well, looking at what you're doing now, you're doing great in your consultancy group, but is there something that you are kind of seeing as maybe the next thing you're working on, or what are you kind of thinking about for yourself?
Well, because my business are going to be moving at some point, so I'm going to try to continue to build my business. Look at how I want to diversify once I move, because I will lose some clientele once I move. Focus on more. I do a lot of so maybe more recruiting focused. I've also thought about doing maybe some more OSHA things, as scary and daunting as that is. But how can I diversify my business to maybe make some changes to what it looks like?
It's good to have the time to plan and explore what's out there. Tennessee is a lovely place, so I'm excited for you there. And on a personal side, one of the questions that sometimes I ask people towards the end is, do you have like a skill or an interest that maybe a lot of people don't know about? So this could be personal, completely non-career.
Well, one of my friends, Elaine, she got me to start running half marathons a few years ago, like out of nowhere. It was like 44. I don't even know how old it was. And she's like, "Do you want to do a half marathon with me?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I have done a lot of half marathons now, and I've done some 5Ks. I only did one 10K. 10Ks are kind of weird. I don't know. Like, it was just a weird distance for me. But I can't always run because my legs don't always want to cooperate. Because sometimes they're like, "Oh no, we're going to be weak today," because my MS, that's the muscle thing, or the nerves in the muscle. And so I walk. So I do walk a lot. I walk a lot of miles, usually anywhere from 3 to 6 miles when I'm walking. When I try to run, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's probably like one thing. I don't have any crazy hidden talents. I'm not crafty because I am a bit of a perfectionist. So when it comes out looking funny, then it makes me mad. So it's not fun for me at all. But I do, I have nieces and nephews that I love to take care of. And they're now 12 and 9, which is growing up, which is crazy. So I do some stuff with them.
I'm impressed that you just are like, sure, let's go run a half marathon.
Well, then I broke my clavicle about two and a half months before we actually did the race. So I actually did my first half marathon. I ran 4 miles of it with a broken clavicle. I didn't wear my splint the sling because I was worried they weren't going to let me do it if I showed that I have a sling. So I didn't wear it. I had to hold my arm like in a certain position the whole time to prevent it from moving. That was kind of, now that I look at that, I'm like, why did I do that? I probably could have got my money back and you had a broken body part, but I did it anyway. I am stubborn. So I was like, nope, I paid $100 and something. We're going to do it. And it's actually kind of fun. I like doing the races because there's a ton of great energy and great vibes. And if you've never done anything, do at least a 5K, because it's fun and you can walk it all. And there's just a great atmosphere. And I really like that. I do also like going to like concerts and seeing bands and stuff like that. My husband and I do that sometimes, and that's quite fun too. So those are things that I enjoy doing. So.
And last question for you. What is something that you are very grateful for?
I'm grateful for, this is going to sound like super cliche, but I'm definitely grateful for my friends and family. Kind of emotional. I didn't expect that. Woo, okay. Because, I couldn't have done what I'm doing today without the friends and family support, my parents, just like all the things you learn as a child, my husband being supportive of the things I do today. Like, without Wanda and Andrea teaching me kind of the ropes of what they did when they created their businesses, all the little things you don't know about, I think without that support, I wouldn't be where I am today. Also sending me clients, those referrals and business and stuff. So definitely my friends and family and my pets, because they keep everything funny and entertaining. Yeah.